Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final in our series of Thursday chats for the month of October. Today, we want to take a look at one of the new norms that we've been forced to live with and adopt to in our daily lives, and that is the matter of remote working, learning, and essentially earning. The challenges were foisted upon us by the ravages of the global pandemic, and essentially we've had to adopt to the way things happen. And so even though the pandemic has by and large been contained, the advent of mixed modalities and or out and out remote working and learning has become part of our daily lives. Today we have with us two professionals from the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency that are going to be talking to us about this. We have Ms. Shereese Smith, who is a senior special agent at the agency, where she serves as a digital forensic examiner and cybersecurity specialist. She has a bachelor's in applied sciences and a master's in cybersecurity. She's also Access Data certified examiner with expertise in digital forensics, risk assessments, vulnerability assessments, and incident response. Recognized as a certified trainer by Israel Aerospace Institute, Shereese is committed to continuous professional development and shows dedication to staying at the forefront of the dynamic cybersecurity landscape. With her today is Mr. Chavaughn Phillips, a skilled cybersecurity specialist with extensive experience in security management, digital forensics, and incident response. Currently, he serves as a special agent and cybersecurity specialist at the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, where he plays a critical role in safeguarding national security through the investigation and mitigation of cyber threats. He has a bachelor's degree in natural and applied sciences and a master's degree in cybersecurity, bringing to the landscape academic knowledge and hands-on expertise when he works. He has a proven track record of resolving complex cybersecurity challenges within the public and private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, the team from MOCA talking about remote work and its implications for cybersecurity. Shereese?
Thank you, Mr. Sterling. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we are. Okay, awesome. So I'll be sharing my screen. Let me get that up and ready. Mhm. All right. Can see it? Okay. So good afternoon again, everyone. I am Senior Special Agent Shereese Smith from the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency. And with me, I have Special Agent Chavaughn Phillips. So today we will be going through, as Mr. Sterling said, remote work and the implications that it has for cybersecurity, especially since it's become such a norm in our society today. So for this presentation, we have structured it as such. We're going to go through the rise of remote work, just how much we've adopted it into our working environment, school. We're going to go through the cybersecurity challenges, those that have arisen and those that have increased since our adoption of working from home. And then afterwards, we'll be going through mitigation strategies, the tools that we can use to reduce these threats and respond to these risks that we've introduced into our daily lives. And then we'll be talking about the best practices that employees themselves can practice in order to, again, reduce the risks that we've introduced with remote work. After that, we're just going to go through the threat landscape. We're going to talk about some cases where remote work actually caused the compromise of some very popular organizations. So to start us off, we're going to have Chavaughn. We discussing the rise of remote work.
Hello, are you guys hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. So, good afternoon again, everyone. So, my name is Chavaughn Agent, I'm Special Agent. So, we're going to talk about rise of remote work. So, everyone knows about work from home, all right? So, remote work is nothing new today. So, remote work is something that's everyone knows about it recently, and it's a new trend going forward in 2024. So, uh, pre-pandemic, um, pre-pandemic, we had a trend of for the global workforce of 17 to 24% of the workforce that was hybrid or even working from home sometime. However, because of COVID-19 pandemic, the pandemic has forced millions of people to be to adapt to work from home almost overnight. So even in Jamaica right now, well, Jamaica in the pandemic, we had 60% of the Jamaica organization implementing some sort of remote work arrangement. And this was recovered from static. Also, after the pandemic, we have still implemented these work from home systems even now. And we have post-pandemic hybrid adoption, which was accepted with global statistics, estimating of 28% of workforce still doing some type of work from home. However, also to note, the work from dynamic has changed. So companies quickly realized that many companies could do effective work without the need of being in office as well. So employees has embraced the flexibility in which they can improve work-life balance. They can reduce commuting to work. You don't have to spend 3 hours coming from home and back. And now you can also have high productivity. So some people can work even late at night if they want to complete a task. So as a result, many companies rethink the traditional office-centric models in Jamaica, as you can see. Also, we have seen a shift in employee policies as well, where some people adopt hybrid workforce, where we have some people coming 2-day shifts, 3-day shifts in office, and work from home for the rest. Also, we realize that there's a huge change in the job market, where we are seeing over 200% increase since 2020, reflecting a lot of jobs working from home or even hybrid jobs currently. Also to note, although we have all these brilliant benefits that we have seen, we still face some new challenges regarding in cybersecurity. And Shereese will be talking about some of these unique cybersecurity challenges right now.
All right, thanks, Shav. Can you hear me? Okay, so as Chavaughn mentioned, we have a lot of benefits from work from home, the increased flexibility, the reduction in our commuting time, but it has caused such a concern in the cybersecurity world because with the introduction of work from home, we're now introducing so many more cybersecurity challenges to tackle, in addition to the ones that we had before with our regular workforce. So, what I'm going to do is get into the challenges and the implications that have popped up now that we've adopted these work from home practices in our organization. So, the first one I want to talk about is the increase in phishing and social engineering attacks. So, as we know, traditionally, we've had phishing attacks on our organizations. And what phishing attacks entails, sorry about that. We're getting those emails, you've won some tickets, click here to redeem them. You've won some money, or if this is HR, we need you to change some username or some password. And we click on those links, we download malware, we offer up our credentials, or I should say, that's the usual expected response when attackers send us phishing emails. Now, When we shifted to this increased work from home or remote workforce, what we did was change our method of communication with our or organizations to be mainly emails. So of course the attackers know this as well. So what they do is they targeted or they've been targeting the remote workforce a lot more with these phishing scams. So and these social engineering attacks. So what we find is that we have to ensure that we have proper staff awareness to identify these things. And we will talk about that a little bit as we get down into the presentation. Um, the next issue that we have is the expanded attack surface. So when we speak of cyberspace and cybersecurity, when we say we have an attack surface, we're talking about all of the ways, all of the different entry points that an attacker has or can use to gain access into an organization. So when we now have remote work, we've increased that. Traditionally, we were sitting in an office, and we had a certain amount of machines, certain amount of desktops, laptops, or servers, and so on. When COVID hit us and we had to fully adopt remote work from home, organizations introduced a lot more computers, a lot more machines, devices into their network. So all of those new laptops that we take in home, those tablets, phones, they became new entry points for attackers to attack us through or to gain access to our organization through. So we basically expanded the surface area through which they could get to us. Um, Another thing to note is the ways that we are connecting to our organizations from home. So we're now using our home Wi-Fi, and we don't have the type of security that we might have had in the traditional office. So we don't have those sophisticated firewalls. We don't have those intrusion tools that can detect if anyone is trying to enter into our networks or to block anyone from entering our networks, which is what the firewall would do. So we've essentially widened the surface area to be attacked. Another point is the remote access vulnerabilities that we've introduced. Now, sitting from home, we have to gain some sort of access onto our organization's network. And how we do this is through remote tools, right? What we have to use are VPNs, virtual private networks, and we might use RDP. RDP being the remote desktop protocol that we find in Microsoft tools, where we can connect from our computer to the server at work or another computer at work. We find that we had to be using these remote tools. Now, the issue with these tools is that some of them are inherently vulnerable or they need updates over time. So for the virtual private networks that we might be using, the VPNs, some example being like the Checkpoint VPN. Over time, you need to update the software. Now, attackers know this as well. They're out there in the wild. They're researching these VPNs. They're trying to find every possible way that they can exploit them to bypass logging in or to steal your credentials. So they are researching those VPNs just to see how they can attack the ones that you're using. For RDP, it's inherently vulnerable. You have to put in extra precautions when it comes to using RDP, whether it be doing some multi-factor authentication, which means there's an added layer of security that we'll talk about further down, or ensuring that we have unique complex passwords. So traditionally, these wouldn't be tools that we'd be using when we're sitting in an organization, is sitting around a computer. But with the increased need for remote work, now we're adding these third-party tools, or we're using the service by Microsoft. Now we're turning it on, and we're introducing those vulnerabilities into our network that come with these tools. Another challenge that we now have is the threat of insiders or insider threat. And it's not to say that it wasn't there before. Previously, you have disgruntled employees, or you have people that believe they've been hired by someone else to spy or to sabotage you. The problem with remote work now is that there is no oversight, really. There's no one watching you when you're working from home. So it introduces the threat of someone being able to attach an external drive or some sort of storage device and download company data and sell that. Or it gives them the opportunity to destroy data more than we had traditionally or before. Of course, you have the unintentional insider, which is someone that, maybe your home Wi-Fi went down and you have a task to complete quickly, and you pop by a cafe, you connect to them Wi-Fi, and you're on a call or you have your computer screen up, and now people can look over your shoulder, people can hear what you're saying on the phone. So we have the malicious insiders that have more opportunity to do things and go by undetected. And we have the unintentional ones that might go into public spaces and sensitive information might be revealed. Now, in addition to that, we also have the issue of weak authentication, and this is a pervasive issue. When we get to the case studies, we'll see that it's one of the main problems that attackers have been exploiting to compromise organizations. When we speak of weak authentication, what we're talking about is having weak passwords or reused passwords that can be brute forced. We're talking about the lack of an added layer of security. So while you might have the strongest password in the world, it's 15 characters in length, the numbers, everything fancy, letters, capital, common, whatever. But then all you need is the username and that password, or it's a password that you're also using on a betting site and to watch some football for your Facebook, for your Instagram. There is no other layer of security after that, which is where multi-factor authentication is necessary. So when we speak of multi-factor authentication, we talk of a second or added layer or not other layers of security. So it might be something that you have, like a token with a code. It might be something that a second password. It might be something that you are, like your biometrics. So after you put in your username and your password to access company resources, you may be required to use your fingerprint to do Face ID, whatever biometric factor that's set up. So we have an issue with this where organizations, they're not really making use of these types of authentication. And so if a password gets compromised in a data breach, then you're at risk because all that's required to log in is a username and a password. And this is what a lot of organizations do, even though we had to adapt to work from home largely when the pandemic hit us. It's been a couple of years now, and we're still having this sort of cybersecurity challenge. So it's really a headache for some CISOs. Another issue that we have is the use of unsecured communication channels. Now, what we talk about or what we mean here, for example, using third-party collaboration tools. So even like video conferencing tools where you have to speak with your team members, you have to speak with higher up execs, and you are using some video conferencing tool. Now, if that has been misconfigured or it's just not set up properly, so there are no waiting rooms. There's no one admitting people, checking that who should be there are the persons that are actually there. If that code or that link has been made public and anyone can come in, then we have an issue there where sensitive information might be leaked unintentionally through these methods. Some more challenges that we have to do with endpoint security. When we speak of endpoints, what we're talking about are literally our computers, our laptops, or tablets, or phones that we're working from. Now, a lot of organizations might have had the resources when the pandemic hit to buy 100 laptops so that the 100 staff could go home and work remotely and they'd be fine. But not every organization have those type of resources. So some of them might have allowed individuals to use their own personal devices for work purposes. So what we have now is your personal data on the same device as company data. And what this does is introduce the possibility of data leakages. These devices is a personal device. You might have messaging apps. You have apps that you might have downloaded from online that had backdoors. Because this is your machine, you're doing anything you want on it. When we speak of backdoors, we're speaking of apps that might have had some sort of communication channel to an attacker. So when you download those apps, you're opening the door and the attackers might have access to your computer. So if I'm bringing my own device where I have my own apps that I downloaded and now I have company data on that, I'm introducing the possibility of an attacker being able to access those organization resources as well. Another issue is the lack of physical security, and we kind of touched on this when we spoke of your home networks and such. So now where you're securing those devices, you're in your house, you go to a coffee shop, you might need to get up for a second to go to the bathroom or something. We don't have the level of physical security when it comes to our endpoint devices like we did when we were in traditional workspaces. Um, and I think we touched on that, having unauthorized tools that might have backdoors. We mentioned that earlier. That can lead to data leakages as well. And I believe this is the last one. So now we have a distributed workforce, right? So as I said, traditionally we're in our offices, even if we have multiple locations, that's a fixed known place, they're known places. Now that we have distributed workforce, we have people all over the place working from home. And what this causes is inconsistencies in how we implement security policies when it comes to the cybersecurity posture of an organization. What we mean by this is an organization, sometimes they used to tell us, leave your computers on tonight. We're going to update, we're going to apply some patches and such. If an organization does not have the resources or the tools that can do these things remotely to apply patches and apply updates and remove software that might be obsolete or they're having issues with, we have a serious problem, because this means if I come to work maybe, what if I come to work like 4 times for the year? That means the device that I'm using for company resources is only going to be updated when I'm able to take it in to the IT or the cyber staff. No, there are tools out there that can do these things remotely, but not everyone will have access to that. And when we get down into mitigation strategies, my colleague is going to explain those for us. So we are there. So Chavaughn is now going to talk about the strategies that we can use to sort of reduce these threats, to mitigate the risks of these challenges, these issues that we have in cybersecurity.
All right, thank you, Shereese. So, in response to the cybersecurity challenges, uh, in response to the challenges, cybersecurity challenges we face in the remote work, we have some crucial steps and strategies we can use to mitigate these things. So, first thing we can implement is a zero trust model. So, what is a zero trust model? Is that every device, every user, every application has to be authenticated before accessing company resources. So everything has to be verified that this phone belongs to John Doe and John Doe works at X company, right? And also it provides that everyone has the least privilege before accessing anything. So they have to gain privilege before accessing any of the company resources, all right? Also, implementing such strict access, it makes everyone to be inside and outside of the network as a threat. So you believe that everyone is a threat, and you have to take steps to prevent any problem at hand. Next point is we can implement endpoint security solutions such as endpoint detection and response. so also known as EDR software, to monitor and secure remote devices. So these type of, some example of this is Sentinel-1 and Carbon Black. So what this software do is it allows real-time detection of if a person is on unprotected website, doing something illegal or anything. It can notify IT staff or anyone to flag these accounts or make it known. Also, IT members can also push out with this software. They can push out mass updates to all company devices if there is any problem ahead. Also to note, endpoint ensure that all devices have the latest security patches and update up-to-date and protect against any vulnerabilities. Also, that's the most important thing, that when working from home is we need VPNs, which are virtual private networks, which should be used to secure access to company resources. So with this, it allows you to have a bridge from your house to your workplace. So it allows you to access company resources without being in office. So with this, it also requires multi-factor authentication. So this is as Shereese said earlier, it's an extra layer of security. So we can use something such as a remote access, such as a phone, or you can receive a one-time access code before logging in to your device. Also, it should be noted that although VPNs are very important in your workforce, you also need it to be updated, because even if it's outdated, the software is outdated, it can cause several problems such as data breaches and further on. And we'll be discussing further in the case studies that you will see. Also, a next important part to mention is data encryption. Data encryption at rest, in transit, and even file-level encryption is very important. If encryption at rest, if the threat actors is able to get onto your server, your device, and they're able to extract these data, it is still unreadable to them because it has say an AES-256 encryption. It ensures that the files are not able to be read, are not able to be accessed that easily. In transit now, we are talking about, like, say, Google Gmail, using Gmail or Microsoft Outlook. You usually have something called TLS protection, where it allows you to have a secure protocol encrypting data going across from between users and system and even applications. And file-level encryption now implements tools like BitLockers or even FileVault for Mac OS, which is additional protection on files, right, such as PDF files, Word documents, anything that you're sharing across each other. So some things to note is security policies, such as remote access policies. So remote access policies is, again, where person have only access to the devices that the companies has brought onto you, like the laptop, your phone, a tablet. These are only things that you can able to access work information for company resources. Not like a personal phone. So you don't want to have things that are out of control for them. Access control policies. Access control policy is talking about granting permission to staff members, such as, is this document important to you as a manager or as an officer? So you have different rules and different persons that can be able to access certain things. Even in the sense of even you working on IT staff, and able to access payroll information. You don't need to access information other than being able to see your payslip, because the only person need to be able to do anything other than is payroll, managing that department. Next thing is important is incident response plan. So our incident response plan is key in every business. So our incident response plan is where what happens if your company experience a data breach or even an event. Say that the company is putting on a smishing event where they're trying to see how you respond to it. So we're just trying this incident response plan is to see how you monitor the incident and how to minimize their impact on the organization. All right. So as a person, you see an email coming, as what Sherry said in our example, with 2 tickets coming to say Reggae Sunfest. You didn't enter anything, but you randomly saw you won 2 tickets. All you need to enter is your work email and something known to you, like your mother maiden name or a password, something you wouldn't really expect, right? Something even like that, you would say, why, you would take it to yourself, that kind of suspicious. You never enter anything, you never say anything sent out from HR regarding any entering of any raffle or anything. So you would see how best you report that to the IT or to the cybersecurity team. Next thing is acceptable use policy. Acceptable use policy outlines the rules and guidelines for using organizational resources, such as how you access the internet, what do you do in your while on company devices. So, for example, you will be using the company device watching World Cup on someone's Plus website, and then now they have a backdoor to your company. Or, for example, on any website such as downloading pirated version of software and things like that. The next thing that is key, that is vital to every company and for even the employees. So employee awareness is number one. All right. So regular cybersecurity awareness is very important. So this allows you to recognize any phishing, any smishing attack that is coming in. So you know what to look out for, how to resolve or how to get rid of these incidents, right? So and also we have simulation attacks. So this is where like IT members would test employees by sending out random emails to see if they will identify the gaps or anything that is there that they notice or anything that is stand out to them, right? And also employee awareness is important in educating staff members about password hygiene. Password hygiene is regarding to the length of the password that you set, any special characters that they are being used, and any numbers in the password. That is very important. And also, with this, we will also talk about the best practices, and Shereese will cover that.
All right. So having talked about the mitigation strategies that the organizations can implement from like their cybersecurity side or their IT side, we also have to focus on what employees have to do, because cybersecurity is responsibility of everyone in an organization. So everyone needs to be on board on what we have to do to ensure that the cybersecurity posture of an organization is good, remains intact. So what I want to go through is just a couple of things. Here we have first using multi-factor authentication, and we've talked about this a couple of times so far in the presentation, and it's just to stress the importance of it, just having an extra layer of security. And we'll see why when we get down to the case studies, because something as simple as this can bring an entire organization to its knees. The next thing for employees to ensure that they're doing are using strong and unique passwords and changing them when they're supposed to change them and not reusing them on any sites that they aren't supposed to. We want to talk about having your data backups. No, it depends on the organization. It depends on the resources that that organization has access to, because for some of them, they might use some sort of cloud backup that they're able to do remotely and do automatically. But for some organizations, the staff at home may need to be backing up their files on like external drives. So sorry, external drives. So they need to know of the policy. They need to know the policy to do these things. What intervals should they be backing up their files in case anything should happen and they have to draw back for those. Another best practice is to lock your device when you're not using them. And we always push for this to be a habit, even if you're at home and it's just you one in the house. When you're walking away to go to the kitchen to get some water or something, lock it so that it becomes a habit. When you do this, if it is that you have to work in some sort of public space, it's such a habit that as soon as you're not doing anything, you lock it, and it becomes something that will protect your organization. Um, Another thing that's a best practice for employees is to practice caution with public Wi-Fi. No, we never advise for an employee to be using public Wi-Fi, but you might be traveling, your Wi-Fi at home might go down, and you just have to stop by the Starbucks or somewhere to sit down and just use them password for them Wi-Fi for a minute. So ensure that if you're doing that, you have your VPN active, you're paying attention to your system. As we say, we never advise for public Wi-Fi to be used when you're using a company device or using a device that will access company resources. But in those emergency situations, if you have to do it, you should at least know that you should exercise caution. You should be using the security tools that your cyber staff or your tech staff has given to you. Another best practice is to keep up with the cybersecurity trends, to do the training that your organization, you might have an email HR saying you do this training, do it. Um, Keep abreast with what's happening out there in the remote world, especially since it's their reality. So just continue learning about the cybersecurity trends, try to keep up with how to identify events or incidents, and how to report them to the relevant person within your organization. And these are just some best practices. Once you do them, you make them perfect, you will in turn help out your organization to not be compromised. So what we want to get into next on the agenda is the actual threat landscape and the case studies that we've discovered when it comes to just the rise in the adoption of remote work. And what we're going to look at first is the landscape. So after, we know COVID hit and everybody had to go and work from home. What was discovered by Kaspersky, which is a security vendor, is that the criminals out there, they decided or they realized that, oh, everybody's working from home basically overnight. And there is RDP that we are sure that a majority of these persons are using. And RDP is very vulnerable. And we mean it has weaknesses to, for example, brute force. So when all of us went home, working from home, using RDP to access our machines in the office, the attackers decided to just increase their attacks on this service. So in 2020, Kaspersky discovered that about 3.3 billion attacks happened on RDP in 2020. And these were the attackers just trying to gain access into all of these new RDP servers that were popping up online when we all went home, just trying to log into any sort of company network to attack them. And when we speak of attacks, what we're talking about is the attackers trying to exfiltrate company data, trying to perform ransomware attacks. And when we speak of ransomware attacks, we mean they've gained access into our system and they've encrypted all our files, and they're now demanding money to unencrypt it. Sometimes they will threaten to post or sensitive or confidential company data online. So these are things that increased when we decided or when we're forced to work from home. Um, Another thing that I wanted to talk about with the landscape, well, is the ransomware, just the significant increase that happened when we went home. So this is statistics from the FBI. Um, of course, it's reflecting US data, but it's still relevant since it's cyberspace. Now, if we look, we notice that at when COVID really hit us at the end of 2019, going into 2020, there was a steep incline in the amount of ransomware attacks. And you might realize that it's a V, but this graph started at 2016 when they had their election. And so, of course, there was an increased attack there. But COVID and the rise in remote work is the reason that from 2019 up, we've just been having an increase in these type of attacks because attackers are aware that people are home, people are using these vulnerable VPNs, they're using these vulnerable services such as RDP, which are easy to break into. A brute force attack means they're trying multiple passwords, multiple just trying credentials, like lists of credentials, trying to get into a system automatically is an automated thing. So if you only have one layer of security, just that username and password, and that's what you're using to access your company, and it's a username or a password that you've reused on other sites that might have been hacked, easy way for them to get in. So these are the trends that came up, the rise in especially the ransomware attacks that were happening and the significant increase in brute force attempts on RDP. Now, one of the case studies that we want to get into is the Twitter hack of 2020. Anyone here heard of this attack that took place? No, that's fine. So in July of 2020, this is when COVID was at its peak. This is when majority of people were working from home. And so that was true for Twitter staff. So they were working from home. The higher level staff members, the ones that had elevated privileges. And when we speak of elevated privileges, we're talking about those that have access to majority of the company resources and they have high permissions. They can edit, they can run programs, whatever it is. So what happened with these upper level people that were working from home is that they became susceptible to social engineering attacks. So remember we spoke of social engineering attacks, those phishing attacks, where in 2020 people are mainly communicating through emails and the attackers know this. So of course they start communicating with us through emails as well. So they targeted those high-level Twitter employees. They send them emails stating that, oh, we realize that you need to give us your VPN credentials because we need to fix something. And they fell for this because at the time, Twitter was actually having issues with the VPN because everybody started working from home and they were using VPN and there was those issues over time with the VPN that they were using to access their company resources. So those people fell for the social engineering that the attackers launched on them and their VPN was exploited. Those attackers were able to gain access onto Twitter's network, onto their organization resources, and sensitive data was exposed. They hacked hundreds of accounts, accounts belonging to like Obama, Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Musk. Those accounts started tweeting out some Bitcoin scam. So of course, Twitter had to disable those accounts. So what they had to do was revamp their whole security, their cybersecurity structure. So what they found out or what they realized was for even their VPN, they weren't really using proper access control. They weren't really using the multi-factor authentication that we talked about for those high-level employees, those privileged users. So they had to come in and change up all of that now because just something as simple as the MF not having multi-factor authentication is what provided the attackers with the capability to pull off this attack. So the Twitter was able to revamp their access control, introduce multi-factor authentication, and they had to increase the training of their employees on cybersecurity and also on social engineering. So we really wanted to talk about this case since it's something as simple as not having multi-factor authentication that causes something as severe as this, where the whole international organization was affected, and people with accounts like Obama and Musk were compromised, and even money, the Bitcoin scam that they called out, they were able to steal a lot of money in Bitcoins as well. So, Shav will be telling us about another popular case that I think you guys might have heard of as well, that was facilitated through remote work.
All right, thank you. So, do you guys know about the Colonial Pipeline in the US? So, this is in Texas. No? All right, so I'll tell you about it. So, in May 2021, this is during the pandemic, some hacker called the dark side, some threat actors called the dark side, right? They were able to gain access to the US fuel line, right? But because of a VPN. VPN not being updated, and it was an old password that was used, and they're able to compromise the password and able to gain access to their system. So being able to gain access to this CIRT system, it was such a big impact that over 100 million gallons of fuel daily were stopped immediately. And this affected not only in Texas, but it affected all the east coastline of the United States. The impact was so great that it was declared a state of emergency for the US, for the US, for the United States. All right. So with this incident, it proposed to have a cost of almost $2 billion daily because of no oil that was being submitted. Well, not being submitted, that was being carried out to companies such as gas stations, hospitals, different places that need these company fuels to run their system. And it was a complex password. It was just that the VPN system was not updated, and it was just easily compromised. But because of this, they were able to get access to their accounting information. They were able to access to their production line. They were able to shut this down for almost 5 business days. It was down for. They couldn't do anything about it until they paid the ransomware group $4.1 million as payment. Even when they paid them, they still weren't able to get the system up because the threat actors were still holding them hostage. However, the Colonial Pipeline were able to overhaul the VPN and remote access policies and enforce multi-factor authentications, right? And work closely with federal agents such as the FBI to strengthen their cybersecurity. All right, and that is some studies that we've covered so far. And do you have any question you can ask us now?
All right, so thank you, lady and gentlemen, for a fairly comprehensive look at how working from home, remote work, the hybrid modalities of life coming out of the pandemic has become a way of life for us all as we move forward. If you have a question, just signify by raising your hand and we will allow you to ask it, or you can type it in the chat. Certainly, work from home affects all of us. And if we have concerns or even just suggestions, now is the time to make them known. All right, so I will take the shine off the ball, folks. When we think about virtual private networks, we tend to do this on the cheap sometimes. For Ms. Smith, what would be your recommendation, particularly to corporations as they seek to facilitate and enable the remote workforce, but must protect their own corporate assets, particularly in light of the DPA 2020?
Yeah, that's a good question, particularly with the DPA. What I would suggest is the incorporation of actual like trusted tools and not rely only on like RDP that Microsoft provides, but using trusted tools that they're able to implement multi-factor authentication policies into. I would also suggest that their additional security policies are like they strictly adhere to them. So Chavaughn had suggested, having proper remote access policies, their access control policies, which speaks to least privilege and stuff, and also their acceptable use policies. So just utilize the resources that are out there, use tools that you're able to fully control and put proper strict security measures in, and adhere to policies, these policies that can bolster your cybersecurity. An important point, as you mentioned with the DPA, that we touched on was the least privilege. So even if you have the best of tools and you have your policies, ensure that people are only accessing resources that are required for their jobs. So in the event that there is some sort of incident, it's not your entire organization or your entire information structure that is compromised, depending on whatever vector you're attacked through.
Thank you for that response. Any questions from the audience? I can ask
What
questions
about
all day.
what about the view on split tunneling? I find that there's some people who say they'd rather have split tunneling turned off rather than on, so that the user is restricted from accessing the internet when they're connected via VPN. Is there any standards or guides that you recommend as it relates to this?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood what's the tool that you mentioned?
Split tunneling, it's when you restrict the user's internet access when they're connected to the VPN.
Well, that's definitely a recommendation that reduces the attacks that you can be susceptible to at the time that you're accessing company resources. So I definitely recommend that, restricting internet access while an organization is while an employee is accessing your company resources. If I understood that question properly.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
I think I see 2 in the chat. So from Jariel Milo, what happened to DarkSide after they were found out to be culprits? If I'm not mistaken, a few years ago, a few members of them were actually arrested by the FBI,
Yeah,
I think in 2022.
yeah. So they were found and able to recover not only the money that they put up as ransomware, but they were located as well.
Oh, Okay, and the second question, or was that the sum total?
I think I see there's another one. How can companies balance the need for remote access flexibility with the need to enforce strict cybersecurity policies or protocols? What I recommend is, do you like, for example, the jobs or the roles that you are making remote, just ensure that it's absolutely necessary. And at the same time, if it is that those roles can be remote, as we say, just implement the protocols, the cybersecurity tools, the technology, whatever that you can, implement it so that those people accessing your organization remotely, they're not introducing risks or threats into the organization. So ensure that the roles that you're making remote need to be, and ensure that you're actually following, like we said, the role-based access controls, you're using your strict security measures.
Right. So I hope that answered your question, participant. But since you've touched on role-based and least trust, how ready do you think companies in Jamaica are for zero trust as an architecture, and how would you recommend that they phase it in or gradually implement it?
But I think worldwide, like we've been talking about zero trust architecture for it's not something that we've been talking about for a long time, but I wouldn't say that we have organizations that have really implemented true zero trust architecture. I struggle to say that Jamaican companies might be like ready for it. I can't really think of much that have implemented true like zero trust architecture, but I hope that it's something that we can at least try to achieve. I mean, there technology out there. Microsoft has a whole package that can help with this. Using Azure and Intune, you can, of course, verify the users, verify the apps, verify the devices. So I mute a little bit. I would recommend that we try. I know that it's really hard to achieve actual zero trust, but try at least. Start implementing the little things at first, because even using VPNs and or multi-factor authentication adds into a zero trust architecture. So we can start small and hopefully we get there someday.
Sounds like sound advice. Are there any other questions for us? If there's none, I have my final question for you, and that is really about the future of remote work. When we think about the fact that some of the biggest compromises over the last 2-3 years have come from the use of compromised credentials, whether for VPN access or just regular access from persons with elevated privileges on the network. What do you think the future of remote work is for Jamaicans? And how can we really sort of, as companies, when we think about, for example, multi-factor authentication, when many employees don't have a second device issued by the company to really facilitate that and have to use their own personal device, how can we strengthen BYOD or CYOD in the workplace to ensure that remote work grows in its resilience and facilitation?
Well, as you said, what we should at least try to do. Well, as you said, the majority of attacks that we've had in the past 2 years are as a result of the remote work from home. But I think that if we like continue these things where we have awareness sessions, sensitization sessions to organizations, we can start somewhere. At the same time, with these just answering the piece by piece. With the if we learn from the attacks that happen, we'll realize that it's the simple things that actually caused them in the first place. Like you said, using the outdated software that really just needed a patch, or not having access to multi-factor authentication. What I would recommend for those organizations that don't at this moment have access to MFA is have some sort of password policy, have it change very frequently. So you're using long, complex passwords. But if you don't have a second layer at the moment, at least have a schedule where this password is changed at the end of every week or at the end of every 2 weeks or such. If you're using one layer, make it hard for the attackers. That's what I would recommend.
Mr. Phillips, your thoughts?
Yes, also to note that we really need to be on cutting on like pirating software. So realizing that a lot of some people like companies sometimes would have like some crack Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, Excel, and presentation, and we have to control these as well because sometimes these are some of the backdoors that are affecting our companies and need to give people from Russia or China access to the information, something simple as that. And even when they love use popcorn time or the other movie website where they download movies, these are something that can even affect you and affect the company. Because something simple as that, you're not even realizing, you're just watching the movie, you move on, and then that's it. Something simple as that.
Thank you for that. Any further questions in the chat or hands raised? No? Well, Senior Special Agent Shereese Smith and Special Agent Chavaughn Phillips, it's been an interesting chat as we seek to secure the new normal or the old normal now because the pandemic is a couple of years behind us. But certainly more and more persons are requesting, they're demanding to be allowed that flexibility to work from home or from a brick and mortar place of employ. And so as we move forward, the security of that, the recognition of the expansion of the security perimeter or the dissolution of it is something that corporations must take into account. It makes lives for us as practitioners in the cybersecurity space a little more interesting. But I thank you for standing on the forefront and continuing to push the fight. And, we look forward to the next in the series. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been one of our fireside chats in the middle of the day, but thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, thank you for having us. I think you wrapped it up well. So thank you guys, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you again.
All right.